Well, the high point for me was when Draft Guinness was launched, I suppose. But for the company, it took time to come to, before it had an effect on the profits. But it did. And it was partly a defensive thing, because the ordinary Guinness was running out of steam. Extra Stout was running out of steam. If Draft Guinness hadn't come along, Saunders couldn't have done his stuff. At least I don't think he could. I don't think the company could have gone on to become Diageo if it hadn't had a refurbishment of its product line. What Beaver wanted was achievers. I mean, Beaver didn't think mathematicians innovative. He didn't think like that. He said achiever. Innovators are never popular. And if you're going to innovate, you must be prepared for a difficult life in that way. But the old guard were partly the old brewers, The recruitment of the old brewers was a mistake in the first place, because the production process didn't need all those brewers. By that time, brewing had become a commodity, an established process which simply needed normal guidance by normal scientists. First of all, they say it'll never work, and if by any chance it does work, they said it wasn't your idea. It was obvious, wasn't it? Pipes is the main thing you'll see. Pipes and tanks and casks. And measuring apparatus. And just like a sort of, like a lab really. I mean, a lab handles liquids and gases. It was in the imagination that you saw what was happening, really, what should be happening, and what you're aiming to get towards. But most inventions come from very, strange things. There's nothing very glamorous about what the things that are around when they're being invented. Not usually. It's all very domestic. The thinking that goes on up there, all day and all night, the way one does. I mean, you live for the thing when it's happening. You've got to get it right. What happens during one day, you think about it, during the night, and then you do something the next day. That's the way experiments work, really. Nothing very dramatic. Well, because the pressures were all wrong. There was no control of the pressures. They had to have a high pressure cask and a low pressure cask with oxygen, and they had to mix the two for every glass. This was in the old days in Ireland, and it was not only the skill of the barman, but the time he would spend on this. It was something like half an hour per glass, which was unworkable in an English pub. Well, you think of an approach to a solution, and then you think of experiments which would bear on that approach. What was needed was a much simpler process which the publican could operate without thinking too much, and which would give the consistent creamy head. And also without the danger of acetification which would come if oxygen were involved. Carbon dioxide is the natural gas of beer. It's always there. So it's the nitrogen which had to be nitrogen, which is an inert gas, which had to be added. But you had to get the right amount, so as to get the right amount of foaming and the right amount of head. And if you did get them right, the taste was beautiful. You got the visible head and the good taste, good flavour, went together. The experiments were observation of how the thing worked, if it worked, with different pressures of oxygen and nitrogen from different casks and different taps. The tap wasn't a terribly sensitive item. It just had to release the gas at a reasonable rate as the liquid poured through. Eric Lewis, yes. He was the managing director of Alimask. Extremely dynamic. And we got on. Nothing was ever too much trouble. If he thought things were going in the right direction, he would build one prototype after another. And this was marvelous. And we tried them in an extraordinarily rapid sequence. I'd be popping up every few days for a new class, trying it out. So the solution involved using nitrogen and CO2 only in controlled proportions. The control was achieved by having a separate gas chamber with mixed gases released into the beer chamber through a reducing valve, achieving a constant pressure in the beer chamber. So with constant pouring characteristics. See? There wasn't a eureka moment. There was a gradual approach to the right result. We knew what the right result was, and then it got better and better, and we did a whole series of large-scale experiments And at that stage, Beaver came into the act. He was the managing director, don't forget, and a very big man in British industry. And he came right into the act himself. And we did one quite big experiment in trade, and then he decided to launch. And everyone in the brewery said, wow, you know, they weren't used to this degree of daring. He said, one day he said, this was in '58, he said launch. And the market was hungry for it, you see. If we had a Guinness that worked, they were pleased to take it. Trouble is that we hadn't had one that worked. One way that every barman made a mess. You know, it was not something that people wanted to know.